In 1970, the Hispanic population was 9.6 million in the United States. In 2016, that number shot up to roughly 57.5 million. According to quitablegrowth.org, Hispanic workers are one of the fastest growing populations in the labor force, and about half of that population is made up of women. There are a slew of issues Hispanic women face that many of these women don't even realize themselves.
Yo pienso que se debe a las costumbres de las personas. Allá los hombres se consideran muy machistas, el machismo, y eso va por generación a generaciones. El padre golpeando a la madre, ellos viven eso, que lo ven como algo natural, que el papá golpea a su mamá, entonces ellos piensan que eso es lo correcto, y ellos cuando se casan hacen lo mismo, golpean a las esposas, y las esposas también muchas veces se dejan y lo permiten porque vieron que sus madres también fueron abusadas. Entonces eso es un círculo vicioso que nunca termina, porque eso se va aprendiendo, y mientras no se corte de raíz con eso, mientras no termine esa cultura, eso siempre se va a seguir repitiendo.
These problems stem from a culture wrought with toxic masculinity and uncertainty avoidance. Uncertainty avoidance is the level at which people are more inclined or uninclined to tolerate ambiguity or uncertainty. The higher the number, the more they avoid conflict and choose structure or a single kind of truth. There are many unique barriers for Hispanic women that put them more at risk for domestic or sexual violence. The first barrier is language. Many resources and literature for domestic violence are primarily in English, which is not easily understood by Spanish speakers. Second, and probably the most difficult thing to overcome, are cultural differences.
But when you go to a country like this, where the culture is so different, and where you have to learn not only the language, you have to be fluent in the language, but also fluent in the culture, then it's, another layer more to one more barrier.
Culturally, domestic violence is very common and a very hard chain to break, considering it essentially gets passed down through the generations. For undocumented women, there's also the issue of not being able to contact law enforcement out of fear for their immigration status.
Because it's not only the violence, the physical violence, but also you see over the years the emotional, psychological violence, and how those women, I don't know how they started in that situation, that relationship, but then you see how much they have been diminished, and also you see gaslighting a lot, for instance. So they called me if I would go and interpret for this lady who had been hit in such a horrible way that she had to go to the hospital. And obviously she didn't call the police, but the neighbors called the police. And usually that's how it happens with family violence, is that the neighbors hear the noise and everything. And so the screaming and so forth. So she went to the hospital, and he was so badly beaten, she had been so badly beaten, that what he also did, he hit her so bad that she was on the floor. And then he jumped on her back. I don't know how she was not, paralyzed. So anyway, so they're telling her how all this happened. And after the interview and after the whole process, she kind of recognized what I do. She recognized me. I didn't recognize her, but I think she knew what I usually do. And so she asked, "Can I ask you a favor?" I said, "Sure, anything." She said, "Could you please call ICE, the immigration office, because the police took him to jail, and then they called immigration. They called ICE because he was undocumented." And she said, "Can you do something about him? Because the poor thing, they might deport him." So then you see that, the process now. And I told her, "He almost killed you, and you want him to be free?" But I was so surprised, that he really almost killed her. And it's because in so many cases, like any other case, we know what happens with that process, but also many times these women, they don't have anybody else. You know, they're immigrants themselves, and they don't have anybody else. They don't have the usual safety nets. You know, the mothers, the parents. I mean, the parents and so forth. They don't have. They're just there by themselves, only just with that guy. You know, and so I guess they say, what am I going to do without him?